women's insulated metal water bottle. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume, and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus than I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. Kind of gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you gain momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates is going to be low, high cost per clicks. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored product, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding. Hello, and welcome back to another Ask Junglr Live. My name is Elizabeth Greene. I am one of the co-founders of Junglr. So we are an Amazon ad agency focused on helping high 6-figure and 7-figure brands who are looking for 8-figure ambitions and beyond and lack someone to help drive the ad strategy. As you can see in the beginning intro, we do a lot of very custom strategic answers here. So if this is your first time joining in, welcome. We are so glad to have you. Or if this is your first time listening in to the replay, welcome as well. So if you're joining us live, the format for this is on all streaming platforms. So we are across everywhere we could possibly reach. You will find a comment box on that social platform. And what you can do is you simply type your question on Amazon advertising into the chat, and we being me, I'm going to give you my absolute best answer. Now, sometimes your question is going to trigger a follow-up question. Sometimes I might sort of give you well, it depends on these things. So if that comes up, feel free to type a follow-up question into the chat, a clarification, more context. We always love context here. A lot of times the questions will even span a couple comments because you want to give me all the context, which I really, really appreciate. Actually, if you were unaware, if you go to our website here, if you go to resources and then to Q&As, we actually do have a page specifically for our live Q&A sections. Also look for a lot more resources coming out of our live Q&As as well. There's a Google Calendar. You can follow this and get access to lives. And also another one, if you can't join live, there are a lot of people who listen into this. I know it's hard to get a time that appeals to everybody's time zone, but we do our very, very best, which is why we always have replays available. And if you can't join live and you want to submit a question, then you can use our Q&A form here. Oh goodness. Oh, I love this question. Okay, this is awesome. We got a question in already. So again, type your questions in the chat. We will absolutely pull those up and get answers to them. All right, so let's do some data crunching live. This is going to be super fun. Okay. Our very first question is, hey, Elizabeth, hope you are doing well. I am. Thank you so much for asking. I hope you are as well. Can you elaborate the best way to do Amazon PPC spend and sales forecast? Okay. I'm going to try and do some mathematics and some things off the top of my head in my brain. So there's more than one way to do something. Or to do this sort of spend and sales forecast. Okay. So, all right, let's think of it. The easiest way to do the spend forecast is going to be your spend can be calculated out as your cost per click multiplied by how many clicks you're going to get. Like, what's your average cost per click? And so with that, you can essentially say, okay, I know I want to get this many orders, and I know it's going to take me this many clicks to get those orders because I have my conversion rate. So you would take how many orders, and then you can take 1 divided by your average conversion rate, which is going to give me how many clicks on average does it take to make a sale. And then you would multiply that by how many sales you want to get. And then you plug in your average cost per click, and you're going to say, okay, I'm assuming at this conversion rate, at this cost per click, this is how many sales I'm going to need to, or how much spend I'm going to need to have to be able to generate this amount of orders. And you can backtrack that off of sales if you wanted to. If you're like, oh, I want to make X amount of sales, you could take X amount of sales, divide it by your average sale price, and then that gives you how many orders, and then you can run that calculation there. You could do that. So it's like spend to reach sales. Also, if you really wanted to, and you had the sales and you had the spend, ACoS is also ad spend divided by your ad sales. So if you have a forecasted ad spend, you have a forecasted ad sales, you can actually generate a forecasted ACoS off of those things. You can get a little bit more complex with it if you want to add an ad sale percentage and total ACoS projections. That one's like, again, we're assuming a lot of variables, which are the cost per clicks and the conversion rates here. Your sale price is probably going to remain roughly the same, but the real things that throw the projection models off, and why whenever you to ask somebody, hey, what would it take for me to spend to generate these sales? Most people don't want to tell you that forecast model. There's so many people much smarter than me who can understand how to build out those calculations I just told you about. The problem is that those calculations rely on you inputting a conversion rate and you inputting a cost per click, and those remaining consistent across your account when you scale, which, as we all know, as things change, nothing ever remains consistent. So that would be what you would look for in spend. Now, sales forecasts here, again, you would basically want to backtrack it into, if you're talking about launch, again, these are like, this is based on so much assumed data. You can also look at Helium 10, say 8-day giveaway, and say like, okay, it takes this many on average to rank. And so therefore, if I divide that number by 8, I can assume I would try and hit this daily sales to rank on this keyword. And then if I need to hit that many daily sales to rank on this keyword, and I'm assuming X amount of conversion rate, which I can backtrack into how many clicks does it take to convert. If I take 1 divided by my average conversion rate, then I could look at that, and then I could plug in a sales forecast. And then I could say like, oh, on average, I'm going to have to hit this. You can also look at it in terms of sessions and conversion rates as well. You could build forecast models off of that. So for example, if I knew on average, it takes me X amount of sessions to be able to generate an order, you could say, okay, if I got X more amount of sessions, I could generate, this would be the sales volume based off of that. The best way to do that is to plug it into a spreadsheet and then sort of build a couple forecast models or play around with it. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, let me pop open YouTube real quick. Michael from Ad Badger and I did a podcast recently going off of forecast models, and that was really good. And there's actually a resource available. I'm going to have to find that for you real quick, but that will be a really good one to go off of if I could find it. But yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a difficult one to figure out, right? It's a lot of mathematics. It's a lot of understanding. The easiest way is like when there's 3 numbers. So if there's a division problem, X, divided by Y equals Z, then you could actually reverse that. And so you could basically, all you're doing is you're solving for the variable. So you just solve for the, you solve for X a bunch of times, and that's how you get to the forecast models. Again, you're plugging in things that are not always consistent, and so that's why most people get really scared of forecast models. The math isn't scary. Math is the math, but that's where you run into problems. So Dante says, hey, Elizabeth, awesome to be back. Awesome to have you. I really always appreciate you joining, and you always have really, really great questions. So if there's any other questions from the audience, or if me randomly throwing out a bunch of random ways to do forecast models, if someone that sparked interest and that sparked a question, feel free to type that into the chat. Actually, I just filmed a Loom video just this morning. Someone had like this whole breakdown of all of their ad metrics. They actually did a follow-up question to one of our newsletters, which, by the way, if you're not on our newsletter, you totally should get on it, because I'm putting out content there that I do not put out anywhere else. Put out a lot of content. There's some exclusive stuff for the newsletter group, and I always appreciate when people ask follow-up questions like, hey, I'm dealing with this. Sometimes you get a whole dedicated video, which he did. Took me a minute to sit down and put it together, because I actually put together like an entire production and forecast spreadsheet for that one, just to kind of illustrate my point and show you what I was seeing. But there's a lot of really fun stuff you can do in spreadsheets. Awesome. Jahiel has looks like we got a 1, 2, 3 part questions. All right, let's bring up the first part. We'll bring up the second part, And then hopefully by the time we're done with that, the third part will be up there. All right, I have 30 product supplement brand getting ready to launch. I have multiple products. I have the keyword immune support, glucose support supplement falls under. Would it make more sense to run a campaign with these keywords, targeting all 7 of my immunity support supplements in that campaign so I'm not overspending on the same keyword, or should I separate them out so each product has its own campaign for that word? I have a lot of latitude when it comes to spend, so my plan is to be as if I have a lot of latitude when it comes to spend. So my plan is to be more efficient as possible when it comes to those broader keywords for supplements and more aggressive on others. That is a great question. And what I would say is how you're thinking about it in terms of being strategic and going after like the specific keywords and being more careful about the broader terms. You're absolutely thinking like an expert marketer. So kudos on that. As far as how to build that out, I would think of it as it sounds like they're all, you have a 30 product supplement brand getting ready for launch, multiple products. So I'm assuming based on the way you phrase that question is that they are all separate listings. If they are all separate listings, I would recommend building out individual campaigns for each of those. Now, technically speaking, you're not going to bid against yourself, meaning you're not going to drive up your own cost per clicks. As long as the products are advertised within the same account. Now, where this gets sticky for any of you who have multiple accounts and you have different brands under those accounts, and yet those brands are competing for the same keywords, those will drive up your cost per clicks. But as long as it's advertised from within the same login, within the same account, you're totally fine to say bid aggressively on one and then maybe bid aggressively on the other one. And those bids are not going to compete against themselves in the ad auction. Amazon's documentation is very, very clear on that. And it's intentional, right? Because they're not interested. That makes no sense for any seller to be like, yeah, let me like drive up my own costs, right? Now, to your point of like in investing heavily in a keyword, obviously you're going to have all the products invested in that particular keyword. So my recommendation there is going to be set them all up separately, set up separate campaigns, and then optimize each depending on the performance of that individual product. And that will kind of shake out to mean you're going to end up spending more aggressively for the products that have better performance, and you'll end up spending less aggressive for the products that maybe don't perform as well on those main terms. And then all those things will equalize. One is going to make your life a lot easier, just optimize for performance, and the chips will fall exactly where they need to, and you won't have to like overthink where everything is. Also, if say like a product is going out of stock and you need to like pull back on something, or you want to like allocate more budget to a particular product because you have higher margins, you're going to have that flexibility within your ad structure to be able to do that. If they're all lumped in together and they're on, again, this is for separate listings. If they were a combined listing with variations, my advice would be slightly different, but you're going to end up with way more flexibility down the road to be able to optimize in a way that's going to benefit the account. So I would do it that way. Rosanna says, my favorite Thursday podcast to watch. Tons of value. Is awesome host. I appreciate it. So the funny thing is, everyone keeps calling this a podcast. I was like, I didn't think it was a podcast. I just thought it was a live. But everyone keeps calling it a podcast. And you know what? We have plans of rolling this out into audio versions as well. So those of you who don't want to watch it on YouTube, maybe we'll have some other options for you to watch. Tune in every week for this as well. But like I said it. All right, Dante. Awesome. Good question. Long question. Let's see if we can get to it. Hey, Elizabeth, do you think products have a threshold? We are in a micro market on Amazon, but get very good sales, although we've been getting the same daily sales for months. I wonder if our products hit a stopping point, or if the agency I'm with is not doing good. Our goal is keeping 30% ACOS. That is a really good question. I would say, Dante, it is possible that your goal of 30% ACOS may be in opposition to your growth goals. Oftentimes this is what happens. Like we get into the situation with clients often. It's just we've had the conversation enough that here is what we would approach it as an agency. You say, hey, we have a goal of 30% ACOS and we're hitting it and we're like, this is great. If you came to me and said, hey, Elizabeth, I'm happy with my 30% ACoS, but I feel like there might be some wiggle room. I want to look and I want to make sure that I'm not being stagnant in terms of sales growth. So it could be that you've hit the cap. It is entirely possible. But one of the things that might be happening and often happens if your singular focus is an ACoS goal, I would actually recommend going a little bit above that and having a total ACoS goal. Total ACoS will filter into profits a little bit more than ACoS because it's actually it's completely possible to have a really profitable ACoS and a really unprofitable account, meaning really high total ACoS. That dynamic is possible. And what I would say is that I would prefer having a healthy total ACoS and a high ACoS than having a healthy ACoS and a high total ACoS, because that second one I just said with high total ACoS and healthy ACoS actually can make you lose money, where on the flip side, we could have a high ACoS but a really healthy total ACoS, and I would actually be making profits every month. So if you're trying to, again, you're trying to make sure you're profitable, so you have an ACoS target, which makes total sense. You would want to, you need to find some wiggle room. So you can think of ACoS as a function of your cost per clicks, your product's conversion rate, and your product's price point. Because how your conversion rate is how many clicks on average does it take me to generate a sale. Your cost per click is how much am I paying for every one of those clicks. That's where conversion rate and your average CPC come into play. And then when your product price comes into play, it's okay, for every single order, how much am I making? And the thing that the advertiser is managing is that cost per click. Now, they're managing ad conversion rate a little bit, meaning if you pick better targets where you have better conversion rate, your conversion rate on average is going to come up for your advertising. But in terms of getting aggressive, like really what you're doing is controlling cost per clicks. And then in terms of bringing down ACoS, most times what we're doing is we're lowering our bids, which is going to lower our cost per click, which will help us achieve a better ACoS, which is fine, but oftentimes that lowering of your bids, which again should lower your cost per click, is pulling back on your advertising and causing you to get less aggressive in the ad auction. You're going to get less impressions, you're going to get less clicks, you're going to get less sales. And oftentimes that's where you hear of products all the time where they're like, oh, I've pulled back on my advertising and all of a sudden, like, I can't find my product and my rankings took a nosedive. A skilled advertiser will know how to manage that dynamic. And so if your singular goal is an ACoS goal and that's all they've been optimizing for, which if that's what you told them, obviously they're trying to do right by you as a brand. But what can happen is that there's only so much wiggle room in pushing for increases in sales through increasing cost per clicks, because that's going to be in direct opposition of perhaps controlling ACoS. So what you can do, because total ACoS is your ad spend divided by your total sales, then the dynamic can pull back a little bit and say, okay, where can we maybe get a little bit higher in our ACoS on specific targets that make sense to, but as long as that slightly higher ACoS is going to push my total sales numbers up, as long as my ad spend isn't increasing in a ratio that's disproportionate to where my total sales are increasing, well, then that's how you can grow an account and maintain total ACoS, even if you're, say, increasing ad spend on the account. So that would be the dynamic I would be looking for. You would want to see if you can zoom out a little bit and then say, are there targets in which we have not gone as aggressive as we might have if we were trying to, say, increase our total sales, because we've been so focused on profitability in the ads that we've sort of lost sight off of market share growth or profitability on the brand as a whole. And that's what you want to look at. So in terms of, have you hit a ceiling? Is there any room to improve? Is there any room to scale? On some level, it's a little bit tested and see, but I would take that kind of conversation to your brand and say, hey, I understand that we might have to have some wiggle room in ACoS. I want us to start taking a look at total ACoS, see where that is, see how that relates to my profitability metrics, and then say, are there places in which you have been hesitant to get as aggressive, to go after maybe aggressive ranking or not necessarily full on aggression, but maybe like increase it a bit. Can we get more orders here, right? Because we've been so focused on ACoS. So if you start managing like that, and again, sometimes it's a test it and see thing, but that's how we typically approach those scenarios. Would be something like that. Oh, good question. So here's one. Apart from KPark, are you using any other PPC software from automation? Hearing a lot about scale insights. What are your thoughts about this? Really good question. So yeah, if you are only hearing of KPOQ for the first time, so you spelled it right, KPOQ, KAPOQ. It is a software that if you listen to me for any length of time, you will hear me talk ad nauseum because we love it. And honestly, we're just getting more and more integrated into the tool. At this point, it's one we can't live without. It's one that we leverage heavily for analytics. I was just on a call with a brand today, and they were talking through their catalog. And honestly, they have a vast catalog, and they're launching stuff like crazy all the time, like multiple products per week type launches. And they're looking to see where they can gain more efficiency. I'm like, oh, are you tracking total ACoS? To the point I just mentioned about looking at overall account profitability as it relates to ads. So I'm like, oh, are you tracking total ACoS on a per product level? They're like, no, we're not. I'm like, well, there's your problem, because that's where you find your inefficiencies when you're able to do that. And so KPOQ allows us to do that at scale across multiple brands, and that has been like a huge game changer for us in terms of freeing up time in the analytics. But when it comes to managing bids, we have a couple ways we do this. One of them is through some internal tools that we're building out that we're super excited about. But you're asking specifically about Scale Insights. So Scale Insights is amazing. There also is a very steep learning curve. Now, I actually have somebody I know personally who his entire business is helping brands get set up on Scale Insights through very granular and custom rule sets based all the way down to product level metrics. So you can get that granular with it. The benefit about Scale Insights is, one, it's just a really economical tool, to be honest. There's a lot of maybe other a little bit more fully automated systems on the platform. There's downsides to all of those as well. But the thing with it is you can set granular rules on pretty much anything you can think of. If there's a way that you look at the data, if there's something that you cross-analyze, if there's something you evaluate before making a bid change, and you want a rule-based system around it, you can almost bet that Scale Insights will have it for you. The downside to a tool that is that robust is you can literally set up anything. And sometimes when you're looking at a tool that allows you to set up anything, you end up setting up nothing, because it is so, like, the learning curve is a lot. So I would say, one, it's a really good option. And then two, if you're interested in leveraging that option, but you don't want to have to go through the pain and suffering of learning it and setting up your own rule set, I got a guy you can talk to. So feel free to reach out. Hello, Elizabeth. What's good? What is good? What is good? The sun is shining. I'm in Florida. The weather there is beautiful today, and I'm really looking forward to going for a walk this afternoon. Cool. So what's good? What is good? All is good. Do you consider running long tail seek keywords from exact to broaden phrase to test to get like a keyword more traffic? Great question. I would say yes, we do run long tail keywords. Yes, I like testing them in broad and phrase match. I think there's some unique, excuse me. There is some unique search terms that can come out of running seed keywords. I also would say in terms of broad and phrase match, I would also add in modified broad match to that equation as well. Actually, I think you might end up getting a little bit more specific long tail variations of seed keywords if you use the modified broad match. Now, the one thing I would say is, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're getting at your question, it's just the way the question is phrased, is you're saying like from exact to broad to phrase, like are we doing sort of like a migration where like exact match being the quote best match type, and then broad being like the one that's only good for keyword research. I would say I wouldn't think of it like that. I would think of it like every match type has a place in an ad account, and I wouldn't sort of negate and quote move up. I would think about it as testing in other match types would be the way that I would approach it. But hopefully that was helpful. Peyton says the Apple's brand is so strong, we can't help but use their words. Yes. Also, fun fact, I know some people get questions about that, like, hey, can you advertise on somebody else's branded keywords? Totally can. You just can't put them in your listing. That'll get you flagged and take it out. Someone says, Rosanna said, post a question over Junglr's website earlier today. Kindly include them in your answers. Thanks. Was that one of the questions? I'm going to have to go back and see if I can look at my emails. I know I got a couple email questions today that were off of something. So, Rosanna, I'm going to pull that up and see if I can find those for you. Hey, Elizabeth, when choosing keyword targets, you avoid keywords with low search volume. For example, keywords with 60 to 150 search volume. I usually prefer keywords with 300 search volume and above, but I've been lately thinking if I'm missing opportunities by doing this. Great question. I would say you're not going to hurt yourself if you put them in there, honestly. And if you don't want to invest heavily in them, start them in low bids, increase them. The only thing that I would say about testing them is just keep potential impressions, like keep your expectations of potential impressions for those keywords low. Meaning, like, if you're not seeing them get many impressions or any impressions at all, be like, oh, that was the point of the keywords. Like, I wasn't really expecting them to get many impressions anyways, because what can happen is if you have a usual cadence of keyword has no impressions, increase bid, and you don't have any like fail safes against that, what will happen is you go, oh, keyword doesn't have any impressions, increase bid. Keyword doesn't have any impressions, increase bid. And it might just be that the nature of the keyword is not that it would typically get a whole bunch of impressions. And so in those cases, what will happen is and that's where you end up with like $10 bits and nobody's paying attention to them. I've done this before, which, by the way, there's an easy way to find this. If you want to find this, go into your account, go into the targeting tab. You can actually sort by bids in the targeting tab, sort highest to lowest, figure out what you see. I recently audited an account that I did this, and I found a $95 bid. Yes, I don't know if it was a typo. I don't know how it got in there. Trust me, we corrected for it quickly. But things like that happen. And so if you want a quick spot check, I would do that. Also, if you have the bandwidth to launch the campaigns, I wouldn't be against launching those, is what I would say, Manuel. Cool. All right. Let's see. We got quite a few coming in. Man, I freaking okay. I'm gonna have to try and get through these questions a little bit quicker, so we got a good 30 minutes left though. Cool. All right, we got another one. How do you also strategize as versus well-known brand to newly launched products with low reviews and ratings? Example, your product is a soft drink versus cola. Thanks. So a low amount of reviews doesn't always have to be a death sentence. Now, a low rating, meaning like if you have like 3 stars, do you keep that in mind? You're just going to have a really crappy conversion rate. You're not going to have a lot of people to trust you that the product's any good. So that definitely can hurt you. I would say in terms of, like established brands versus well-launched products, you want to really, really zero in on which subsection of the market is buying the products. Classic example, I just got off an audit. We were evaluating the brand and they were saying like, oh, we have a particular, like we launched a bunch of these product lines and like they've never really taken off. We don't know what's going on with the ad structure. So I went in, I did an evaluation, and one really good insight you can get is looking at the search term reports. So I went in and see what was being advertised on. And then I also went and looked and see what search terms were converting. I was like, oh, you're not targeting your specific market. So they had a product, it was like a bag, of, in some niche of some kind. And they're targeting like the main keywords, right? The full description of the product, which this product was equivalent to the, the main keywords, and it made sense. But when you actually looked, all of those keywords or all of those searches, all the times those main searches triggered inside of their advertising, there pretty much was no conversions on it. However, if you looked at actually what was converting, it was all of their like extra large bag keywords, or this, strong keywords, or like everything that said like, it's the more big, robust, premium version of that particular bag. We're like, oh, this is your submarket. This is who is purchasing your product. This is who wants to buy. So instead of us trying to throw money at something that's not working for us, we need to go after our submarket. So what you need to do when you're doing this evaluation is, Coca-Cola is going to own the soda market. Like, you're not going to be able to launch and say like cola or soda or something that's generic, right? Everyone associates Coca-Cola with that. That is their category. They own that category. What subsections of the category do they not have good ownership of? They have Coke Zero, which is like a zero sugar version. Maybe there's like a natural, like a stevia version, or I'm trying to think, like, do you have a particular flavor? Is there style? Is there like something, like, what about the product speaks to a specific market? You want to evaluate that. You want to evaluate where those shoppers are searching for the products, and then you want to go after this. So this is going to tell you two things. One, you should get better conversion rates here, because if you're appealing to that submarket better than the overall generic brand, you're going to do better. But then two, if you are going after shoppers who you have identified are your exact target market and you're not converting and they don't like it and they're not leaving good reviews, that's a signal that, oh, my products, there's something I need to do to my product to help a better appeal to this market. Be it maybe my price point's too high. Maybe I need to set, I need to get better listings. Maybe I need to evaluate the product as a whole. There's something that's not resonating. So I would say if I had a launch strategy, I would do that. And the other thing that I will say, it's a really unfortunate truth, but good advertising will not fix a bad product. That needs to be said. So if the product cannot compete, our job as advertisers is to put the product in front of the best shopper, like the best targeted shoppers possible. And then it's up to the product and the listing to convert those shoppers. Cool. Hey, Elizabeth, you always have great thoughts on Amazon ads. Well, thank you so much. I am flattered. That's why I show up on Thursdays. You guys, you make my day. You make me feel so loved. I appreciate it. Do you have plans to integrate Walmart ads in the future? So we are testing Walmart ads. We are testing Walmart ads as a favor to a couple of our brands. We don't fully offer it as a service because I know we're super good at Amazon advertising. I know we know what we're talking about. We want to be able to say the same thing when we fully offer Walmart ads as a service. So we're getting there. But Walmart advertising is also pretty early on in the game. Like, you can't add negative keywords to Walmart, which is annoying. But they also have some stuff like you can get search term data on a per product level. So they have some good stuff and they have some not so great stuff. But the platform's not as mature yet. Dante says, well, thank you very much. Focusing on ACOS and limiting keywords that have the potential to scale, bring more sales for the brand, even keeping the same ACOS. Correct. Yes, that is possible. So I would say I would have the conversation and I would go through and evaluate where you might be. So I would look for keywords with strong conversion rates where you have pretty good market share there, and then just say, hey, is there potential to push these targets to gain more market share? And then you evaluate it that way. But you would want to look into the count to see. That's my guess. Given your question, that would be what I would advise is probably the case. And then what you want to do is just go and look at the data to evaluate it. All right, another great question here. All right. I have a phrase match ordering $25K a month. Oh, awesome. Congrats, by the way. I have found around $6K in ad spend from the search term reports of 0 sales. Most are relevant keywords with 1 to 5 clicks. 250K impressions. Click-through rates are good. All keywords are relevant. What is your recommendation? Negate or lower bid? If If you have a phrase match campaign that's generating $25K a month. Okay. This is a good question. So what I'm going to ask you is this. Because you said most of these are coming from 1 to 5 click keywords. A couple ways you can do this. One is when you are evaluating those 1 to 5 clicks, what date ranges are you looking at? Are you looking at all the data? By default, you could pull up to, I think it's like 65 to 90 days in the search term reports. If you're able to, so this is something that we do, we will archive search term reports every single month. So we have like a longer look back window from when we did the brand. We also use a software tool, again, called KPOC, KAPOQ. I love them, can't plug them enough. But I would, what they do is once their system starts pulling the data, which can only go back so far, it will continuously pull and update the data. And a lot of softwares will do that. So you can then look back over a longer period that's longer than that 65 to 90 day window and then evaluate, has there been a large accumulation of clicks than just the 1 to 5? So that would be an option, is like, how long can you look back? How much data do you have? Can you aggregate some data together and gain a bigger picture? So that can help you over time, start to weed out these things. The other thing that I would ask is, you said you have a phrase match campaign. It's generating $25K a month. Are you happy with the ACOS? So what I will say is this, in those like typical keywords, we call it death by 1,000 cuts, right? That's really just our testing. It's the name of the game. Not every single thing is going to convert. Not everything's going to have enough data. So that's the problem you're running into, is you don't have enough data to make a decision. However, when I don't have enough data to make a decision and I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, I would ask myself, on these keywords, they're obviously generating sales for me. Are they generating sales at an acceptable ACOS? If the answer is no, then I would adjust my bids. If the answer is yes, I would say, as much as you're looking at that 6K in ad spend and you're like, if I had this 6K back, what I could do with it, you might just be happy with a good ACOS performance. Now, I will say there is one other thing you can do. It is, again, from Michael from Ad Badger. He is phenomenal. He's such a great friend, and he has got some really amazing insights into really unique ways to look at Amazon advertising. He did something, it's called an N-gram analysis. I would look that up. So I would look up N-gram analysis, Ad Badger, and that should come up on YouTube. And that you might try running that on the account, and that might give you some things that you can negate. Oh, good. Rosanna said posting questions here. Yeah, I was answering those through email earlier, so I appreciate you doing here. Want search query performance for my product's men's shoes. My product has a parent based on styles. Each parent has the variations. Yes, a lot of variations, a lot of things. And this is the problem you run into with search query performance. How can I get parent-wide search query report reports, not entire brand nor single size ASIN in search query performance? That is a great question. So one, you would have to download every single individual child ASIN and just aggregate those reports together. That's how you would have to do it. It's an absolute pain, but it can be done. And there is, let's see, feel free to leave, or maybe I'll try and find this comment later on and post it. I would have to go find it. There are browser extensions that will allow you to input a list of ASINs and then download the aggregate data for those. So I would look into that. And if you're unable to find it, message me and I will find the link to the one I was thinking of. All right, Rosanna also had another question. Against exact match keywords, I advertise all my size variations. When the customer enters a search term, how does Amazon pick which of my ASIN variations to show in the search page results? That's a good question. So it really depends. From my understanding, it has a lot to do with which ASINs perform the best. And that's also from a click-through rate standpoint, from a conversion rate standpoint, and from a add to cart standpoint, along with, I think they're starting to try and do a little bit better as to which variation better matches the shopper search query, but they don't always get that right in terms of color or size, is something that I've noticed. All right. Peyton has, how useful is the auto campaign 20 to 40 cent bid strategies for low margin items in 2024? This used to be my go-to. Yes, still a great strategy, still an awesome strategy. I would still absolutely run it. What I would say is I would not increase those bids, keep those bids low. You want to keep the campaign strategy consistent. And then 2, if it's not working, lower the bids. So still do optimizations on it. You also can look at it periodically for negatives as well, which would be helpful. How are you using search query report? Most Junglr templates are for data dumping. Curious to know how you utilize it. Yeah, so the main way that we utilize it is analyzing which searches perform the best in terms of click-through rate and conversion rate, and where we have an advantage in terms of click-through rate and conversion rate over the competition. That would be our primary use case for search query reports. As I just mentioned with one of the past questions, we deal a lot with clothing brands and a lot of variation products, which it can get a little bit difficult to aggregate all of that data at the parent ASIN level. So tools definitely help with that. Next question. How do you approach search terms from a phrase match campaign? Okay, all right, we're going to have to dig into this one. We're getting nitty gritty with the data. How do you approach search terms from a phrase match campaign where 50% of the sales revenue are generated from unique searches that are 1 to 3 clicks, low impressions, but made 1 sale? Great. They are long tail keywords. They are relevant too. Should I put them in a separate campaign, exact match? Mind that my listings are made well and good. Yes. If you have the availability, I would pull them out. I would put them in exact match. I would also keep them. I would not negate them in the original campaign, because sometimes what happens is maybe the exact match don't trigger as much. Keep them in the original. Keep optimizing for good performance there, and then test them in exact match would be a good workflow for that. Great question, though. Thanks, Elizabeth. It is very clear to me now. Good. Glad I can make it clear. I always hope I'm saying something useful. All right. Next couple questions. Looks like we got a couple minutes left. It's going to depend how many questions we get in the chat. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to type those in the chat. We'll make sure that they get answered. Otherwise, if we don't end up with too many questions, we'll end the stream slightly early. But piggybacking off the Walmart ad question, what are the main differences between Amazon ads and Walmart ads? No experience with it, but you just got asked to handle an account for Walmart. Yeah, so there's some interesting nuances to it. The optimizations just got easier, and this is something we're still digging into with the addition of bulk file or bulk operations into Walmart ads. It used to be like optimizing was super painful. From my remembering, and to be honest, I have an account manager who's kind of spearheading our strategy there. He said he just came up with like a dedicated strategy that he's going to be testing. And so I'm probably not going to be the foremost expert on Walmart ads. Although if I'm starting to get more questions like this, I'm definitely going to have to dig into Walmart ads as well, more strategically. But I would say it's a lot of like broader targeting tends to work really well. And then also that comes with a double-edged sword of there is no ability that I can think of right now to add negatives into your broader targeting, which is very annoying. It's still a lot of like a lot of old school Amazon ad strategies work on Walmart. So the whole typical like started in auto, start in broad, go to like more specifics. Those strategies tend to work well in Walmart. And then I would say just watch. It is a, what do they call it? Like a third price auction now, where you only are going to play one set higher than the next highest bidder's cost. You're only going to say 1 cent over whatever the next highest bidder is. It used to be that whatever you bid is what you paid, which had a potential for a lot of wasted ad spend. That's no longer the case, so you can be a little bit more confident in your bids now. But I would still start low, work your way up. I wouldn't go crazy with it. Oh yeah, so Dula said, data looking back 2 months, ACOS is not the best, 45%, looking to lower it to 23%. Yeah, in that case, I would lower the bids. And then if you have anything that is performing well, you can always test pulling that out and putting it in an exact match campaign. If you like are worried that lowering your bids too much is going to hurt some of your main performers, you could do that. No, this is not. Rosanna, which variation Amazon would pick up when all the variations are advertised against one target? If Amazon will look and pick the one that's doing better, is not better to advertise just one variation myself. So what we do when we start off with variations is we will put all of the variations into a campaign, because at that point, if we're launching, we have absolutely no data ourselves to make an educated determination as to which one is going to perform best. We can have our best guesses, but they're guesses at that point, and anyone knows. Once you start to gain the data, if you've ever done that, if you've ever put multiple variations into an ad group and then advertised those and then gone back and evaluated a couple of weeks later, what you will find is that oftentimes what gets the most clicks is not always the best performer. Now, you're always going to have the one at the top, and typically speaking, the ones that do tend to get the best sales like kind of rise to the top in terms of how many clicks. But if you look across all of them, and I've been in accounts where someone set it up, they launched it, and then just like never went back and touched it. What happened in those cases is you'll find products that have hundreds of clicks on them, but no sales. And in that case, you're like, why in the world is Amazon sending traffic to this variation? It's not converting. I don't know. I just know that they won't always advertise only the bestseller. And so what we'll do in those occasions is we will take that data, we will analyze, and we'll optimize off of it. So if you have no data, you're good to run all the variations. Once you start getting in that data, you will be able to make better decisions than the algorithm will if you put all the products in there. Providing, again, you're constantly doing analysis and constantly optimizing the campaigns. And if you want a video on the best Amazon ad strategy for variations, I will show you what that looks like. I'm going to take this down. This video right here, how to increase sales, the best variation ad strategy. We manage advertising for a bunch of clothing brands, which, as you can imagine, have a billion different variations in them. It's an absolute madhouse. It's fun, but it's intense. And so through that, we have really refined our ad strategy when it comes to variations. And so that's the best strategy to use. So I would recommend going and watching that video, which I can also drop in the chat as well. You should be able to get access to that. Sweet. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm at the end of my question lineup, which is great. We got maybe about 10 minutes left to go, but my voice is also about to go as well. So if we get another question within these next couple minutes, I will definitely make sure. Oh, good. We got a last question. All right. Snuck in it. Great. Last question. When segmenting performing keywords into a new campaign, how do you decide which keywords should be picked? Let's say you have 20 top keywords and you segment them into campaign 1 with 5 keywords, campaign 2 with 5 keywords. Here's how we go about it. We look at campaigns in a couple ways. The first way is, of course, by budget control. So that's the point of having limited keyword sets, to some 5 in a campaign. The second way you can look at campaigns is a way to identify strategy. So what we often do, and it depends on how many keywords we have, but we'll segment them based on how many orders they're generating. It's typically how we'll do it. Now, if I was evaluating the keywords and how many orders these were generating, and I say, well, okay, so this particular keyword is generating like 20 orders in the last, couple weeks, and these rest of these keywords are generating like 4 orders, 3 orders, maybe one of them's got 5. They're pretty good, but I've got that one breakout keyword that I really want to get specific with. In that case, I would say there's a good argument for a single keyword campaign. Because again, we want to get really strategic, we want to get really intentional, and we probably want to get more aggressive with it. Single keyword campaign it is. If you kind of have variations of it, then oftentimes what we group is keywords with 3 or more orders, and then only 1 to 2 orders. Our assumption there is that anything with 3 or more orders is pretty consistently performing for us, and we can be pretty confident that it should continue to perform for us, versus if something only has 1 order, maybe 2 orders. It could have been especially 1 order. It could have been a one-off, right? Like it could have just been a single click purchase. Somebody randomly meant to purchase that a long time ago. it may or may not make sense. It's not really consistently performing for us. At least hasn't proven to consistently perform for us. We might still want to advertise on it. We might still want to test it. However, we can't be as confident of it. So we would split out our campaigns that way. Also, I would say if you are going to segment performing keywords, I would not move things, meaning I wouldn't negate in the original, like where you found the search terms. I would simply launch new campaigns and then run those in tandem and then use my bids to get more aggressive on one, less aggressive on the other one. It's typically how we do it. All right, Ryan Vanna said, thank you so much. Of course, it is my absolute pleasure. We had a last minute question snuck in there, which was a really, really good one. So I always appreciate you guys' questions. If we get another last minute sneak in, I'll have time to answer it. But otherwise, I appreciate everyone watching. He said, thank you. You are very, very welcome. It is my absolute pleasure. So as always, I thank you all for joining. I thank you all for the amazing questions. Seriously, there was some intense ones this time, but I feel like we got through it. I feel like I got you guys some really good answers. So as always, you can watch the replay of this. If you are watching the replay of this, I appreciate you. And we will see you all same time, same place next week, where we will be answering more of your Amazon advertising questions.